says that the man didn't sleep with her and wants to leave her, but it blew up because she doesn't get an inheritance.
No, there's no political reason for it. They hate each other. Okay.
Well, she could get a divorce.
Well, she doesn't want to have to start off. We are on, we started the new parak, and we are on page Ayin Zayin and Beis, 3 lines to the top. And we said a woman's believed when there's peace in the world to come back and say that her husband is dead. And the Gemara says on the 4th line in Ayin Zayin and Beis, Ma ben sholem lo'olam ben ilcham lo'olam. What's the difference between peace in the world and war in the world? Milcham, if there's war in the world, Sfura bo shemeis, she thinks he's dead. Below meis, he's not dead, right? So therefore, we cannot rely on her. But if there's peace in the world, so she's not going to say he's dead unless it's really dead. Now, Ad could do it. Until now, we know that when there's war on the north, and she comes from the north, or B'darom, or there's war in the south, and she comes from the south. Hoy said that she's not believed, because we say she thinks the guy died, but he didn't die. What if there's war on the north? She comes from the south. But she lies. Now we know she came from the south, but she lies, and she said she came from Minat Safan Basi. Vani Omer, but I know Minat Doram Bas. She came from the south. You got the case? There's war in the north. She came from the south, so she should be believed. But she says, no, I came from the north.
Right.
She's lying. We know she came from the south. So, and she says her husband's dead. So what's her stat? What's the status then? So says the Gemara, Svura lahatir satzma. She thinks she's making it better for herself. See, she's only a woman. What does she know? She thinks that by saying she came from a war zone, we're more likely to believe her. She doesn't know that, in fact, we're less likely to believe she came from a war zone, and more likely to believe her if she came from a place where things are going quietly. So and we do believe her. In other words, we give her the credit and we say that it's true that you think that your statement will not make you Muslim because you're saying you came from a war zone. But since we know that you came from a peace zone, so therefore we accept what you're saying, that your husband has died, and we'll let you get remarried. Okay? Similarly, she says he died on his bed. And I know that he went to war, so what you call? So in that case, I forgot exactly what we say in this case. We say in this case, I think we have to change. I didn't realize it when I was there. I think we have to change the girsa here. I saw they made a big deal about it, but I didn't understand, but now I see. I think it's the opposite way around. So they didn't pay attention to all the people who changed the girsa. But now I think you do have to change the girsa, which is more believed when she said that that the guy died, that her husband died in bed. So I think it's the other way around it should be. Hilmaris al milchama meis, or it should be that he died in war. Vani omer, and I know that al mitaso meis, right? And I know that he died actually in his bed, right? So why Yomeres b'milchama halach? Why is she saying that he went to war? She thinks she's going to be matir herself more readily that way. But in fact, I know, again, the logic is that she thinks it's easier to be matir herself when her husband died of war, because that's more likely. But we know that her husband died in bed. So we give her the credibility of having had her husband die in bed as opposed to having died in war. Again, because we don't take what she said at face value, we understand that she's doing it because she wants to persuade us, but we give her the credibility of what actually the reality occurred.
In this case, we don't let the husband die.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. We know the husband died regardless, so what's the difference?
Yeah. She thinks it's easier to get credit by saying he died in war.
She wants the veterans' widows' benefits.
That's what I figured.
Oh, so the Amud Yerushalayim explains it. The Amud Yerushalayim at the bottom says, that we just accept that he died, and we know that he wasn't in war. We know he wasn't in war. We didn't know whether he died or not. So we accept that he died, and we assume that she's lying about the warfare. Okay? So we said, it's not that we knew he was dead. We knew he wasn't in a war zone. So therefore we accept that he died. Okay. All right.
Right, she was being run away from the war.
1 second.
There's 2 pages status for.
Okay. Says more further. Ezui Ktata. We said in the Mishnah, whenever there's a fight between them, she's not believed. What's a fight? Rabbi Bo B'Shem Rabbi Chia Barashi said, Loki dashtani, you didn't marry me, Loki rashtani, you never divorced me, Lo isi shtech miyamai, and I was never your wife. Ezui Ktata, that's not considered to be a war. Ki dashtani, what's a war? Dr. Spedel, what's a war? About what would it be a war? What would be a strife between them? Apply the Spindel rule. The money fight, right? Ki dashtani v'girashtani. You married me, you divorced me. Ela shalona satoli ksuvasi. But you give me the ksuva. Harei zeketata. So bottom line is, fights about whether we're married or not married, those are considered to be for fights, and that's just the way people speak. But a real fight is when money gets involved. Okay. Amar Rabbi Ba, Rabbi Ba, Kumi Rabbi Chia Barabba, Rabbi Ba said this over to Chia Barabba. Amar, so he said to him, it should be low. Lo b'ni, no my son. He tovas bevadai lizgarish. Even if it's not just a money fight, even if she demands a divorce, that's a fight, and she's not believed to say that her husband died when we know there was no shalom bayis between the two of them. Rabbi Yomer, this quote from the Mishnah, he says, and he came because they are cruel. She's not believed unless there's indications, right? She comes crying and her clothes are torn. That's not a proof. Imagine one woman was crying and one was not crying. Just because one knows how to pull the tears and the other doesn't, so they're going to be mati one and ask the other one, makes no sense. Furthermore, Rabbi Chanina, the friend of Rav Chanina, the friend of the rabbi, said, Hagat, imagine this, she ought to have known the Yisrael mates. Maybe she's crying because her son went out to Chutzlars and died. And he'll I'd say maybe she remembers that she's crying. In other words, she's jerking the tears, not because her husband died, but rather because her son died. So she found something upon which to cry. So the bottom line is that the crying doesn't have anything because it might well be theatrics or have another cause, and therefore it's not relevant to our scenario. Okay?
I'm a little confused. Why don't we believe her during times of war? And we believe
So she imagined he died.
but it's quite possible that he did.
Yeah, but she has to bring proof. We don't believe her just on her say-so.
Oh, that's right.
We only believe her on her say-so time of peace, not in time of war. During time of war, we need some proof of it. That's why they're all the Laguna literature, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the likelihood of finding proof if in the middle of a war is even less.
True. So, well, it's life. But that's death. What can you do? It's tragic, but there's nothing to do about it because I was not willing to be matir that much under those circumstances. Beisil says we not only were matir, believing her, in a case where she comes from the harvest. And the Yerushalmi said, come on, achas haba min hakatir, let's just come from the harvest, achas haba min hazeisim, or she's coming from the olives, ve'achas haba min hazeisim, she's coming from chutzlarts. They only spoke about harvesting because that's a prevalent case. They believe her in all cases. There's a fascinating difference between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi on this. The Bavli in this Mishnah, which is a kind of a longish Bavli, actually learns that this Mishnah, the original perspective of Beis Hillel, was based on a general principle which Chazal have, that whenever you have sometimes we have a heter and isser, it only is applied in the cases in which the original episode which generated the heter or isser applied. For example, we have halacha when it's not to go out with studded sandals on Shabbos. Why? Because once people trampled death in a cave on Shabbos, right? But the rest of the week you're allowed to wear studded sandals. We have halacha, you're not allowed to take a duma waters in a boat, because once when they took it in a boat, they found there was pieces of flesh from a dead body in the boat, right? And therefore the paradum waters became tummy. But they didn't ask for transporting any other way, just transporting in a boat. So on and so forth. There are several cases in Shas where we ask for things because of specific incidents and only in the parameters of those incidents. And obviously there's a metaphysical explanation of that or a theological explanation of that. That has to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent them a sign that under those circumstances should be prohibited. So those are those circumstances under which we prohibited. So there was an episode, obviously in history, when there were matir, a woman, when it was coming back from the harvest and said her husband dropped dead in the fields, that we believed her. So therefore Beis Hillel originally thought we're only matir in cases of harvest, and Beis Shammai considered them otherwise. So that's the Bavlis in a nutshell. However, the Yerushalmi is much more, so to speak, rationalistic as opposed to technical on this. The Yerushalmi says that as we're about to see that there's a logic to say that she's more likely to be believed during the harvest. Not because that was the episode which occurred necessarily per se, rather because it's more likely. Let's see that inside. Arlen Beis Shammai said, look, the whole year you can harvest something. Okay, how so? You have to cut your sorim when the barley harvest is over, Nichlas cut your chedim, start harvesting the wheat. You have to cut here when the harvest period for the grain stops, Nichlas batir, you start harvesting the grapes. Yotza batir, stop harvesting the grapes. B'nichlas mesik, you start harvesting the olives. Nipsa kol hashana kula katzis, you're harvesting the whole year. So what difference does it make? V'kim was divrem, and Beis Hillel conceded and sustained their words. V'lo makatir, what was though the Havamina? Why would we only believe at the time of harvest? Ramana said, the unsa shchiach. At that time, it's prevalent that accidents occur. The sun does not beat heavily on a person's head, except at the time of harvest. Although that which it says, we had this in the Torah a few weeks ago. The boy grew up. The day came. He went to his father to the harvesters. Even he said to his father, "Reishi, my head." And he said to his servant, "So take him to his mother." When they took him, they carried him they brought him to his mother. He sat on her knees at a time till the afternoon. Yevamos, and he died. So we see that there's more susceptible to sunstroke during the time of the harvest, and that's why this kid died, who eventually Elisha brought back to life. So that's why there was a Havamina to only allow being matir based on her say so. When logic dictates, it's more of a reason to assume that he died during the harvest time. Or another alternative, Rabban Amrei, the richa shashchiach, because there are a lot of snakes at the harvest time. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yisrael Rabun says, Sakosa leroishi. This is Torah. David HaMelech says, please put a sukkah over my head, b'yom neshek, on the day of neshek. What's the day of neshek? B'yom shakay top of ha'inches ma'ava, yom shakayitz no shekas ha'choref. Or on the day that the sun meets or kisses the summer kisses the winter. In other words, the change of seasons are particularly difficult for an individual, and therefore I need to have your protection. Davar b'yom neshek, nishko shel Gog, the weaponry of Gog. In other words, when the ultimate Armageddon comes, so then protect me. Another word interpretation, b'yom sheshnei lomas noshkim zeh, so about the day when the two worlds kiss each other. Olam hazeh yotze, one is leaving Olam haba, Olam hazeh, Olam haba nichnas, and entering the world to come. So he wanted HaKadosh Baruch Hu's protection at the time of death. Okay? Now, After she testifies that her husband died, so we let her get remarried, right? Beishamai Tinasei, she can get remarried. He told ksuva, and she gets the ksuva also from the first husband's estate. Beisahil Tinasei, she can get remarried. Veloti told ksuva, she cannot get her ksuva. Why? Because we're more machmir in the edus required to get her money than in the edus required to allow her to remarry. Amul Beishamai said that makes no sense. He tarted Mr. Erva Chamura. You allowed erva, the prohibition of her remarrying, which is more severe. You're not going to allow the money, which is a more lenient issue. Beisil said, nevertheless, I have to say this way, because we found the brothers do not enter their deceased brother's portion based on her testimony. So we see that you can't actually rely on their testimony for matters of monetary law. Beishamai said, not true. We learned from the book of Riksuva. It's true. The brothers we can't allow to go down to property based on her testimony that her husband died, because there's no inherent proof. So rabbinic proof doesn't work for matters of monetary law. However, vis-a-vis the ksuva, it should work. Why should it work vis-a-vis the ksuva? Because in the ksuva it says that if and when she's permitted to remarry to somebody else, she is allowed to take whatever she's supposed coming to her. So therefore we darshan the language of the ksuva itself, we expound the language of the ksuva to teach us that she should get the ksuva once she has the right to get married, and Choseh Beisil Loris K'divrei Beishamai Beisil Reneg, and started passing like Beishamai in this matter. Okay, now there's a fundamental principle we're going to underline next tomorrow, which is not in the Bavli at all, or very little is in the Bavli, I should say, which is that we darshan the language of the shtar. We expound on the language of the shtar in order to tell us what to do. Because like here, expound on the language of the shtar, which says that the moment she was permitted to marry somebody else, she gets her ksuba, right? And so too we're going to darshan other things. What about her daughters? Can her daughters get fed by the estate? Excuse me. Well, I say that husband, assuming that he's dead. So Beishamai avdin ksuva medrash. They made the ksuva into a medrash. They say the Beishamai darshan, Beishamai darshan. Misevik svas and nilmod. From the book of Riksuva we learn. Shukosiv lach. He writes to her, Shim tinasi lacher titli mashakosiv lech. If you marry somebody else, you get what's coming to you, right? And Choseh Beisil is Kadesha Devrei Beishamai. So Beisil learned like Beishamai that that's the case, that actually we do darshan the ksuva. So here too we darshan ksuva to say that they get the mezonos after they get fed when we allow her to elect ksuva as well, it seems. Okay? And Beisil himself came around to darshan ksuvas. How so? Darash Hillel the elder himself darshan. Lashon Hediel Toyu Kaisim Alexandria. They used to write a common language in Alexandria. She'echamem Mekadesh Isha. What happened there? What happened in Alexandria would be one guy would make kiddushin on a woman, and his friend would snatch her from the marketplace, and he would marry her, right? So that's no good, right? Because it seems to be a mamzerus issue, right? So says the Gemara. They wanted to say that the kids and the second husband are mamzer, right? Because he grabbed her out of kiddushin. So, the elder said, no, let's take out the ksuva of their mothers. And then they took out the ksuvas of his mothers, and they found it was written in the ksuvas, L'shetinasi lebeisi. When he entered my house, to having Lila into K'das Moshe V'Yudoi, then he'll belong my wife like the Jewish religion dictates. So they made a t'nai actually in the ksuva that if the marriage never reaches the Knisa Lebeso, they enter into the house, that the marriage is retroactively null and void. So that saves the kids, of course, from becoming mamzerim, right? Because the marriage which was contracted, which was, so to speak, dissolved, by their being snatched away after the kiddushin, was legitimately dissolved, because all it requires to be dissolved is that the condition is not fulfilled, and the condition was that the marriage is only a valid marriage the moment she actually enters the house, and she never entered the house. Okay, is that clear?
Sounds like a prenuptial agreement.
Right, it's a prenuptial agreement, right?
Tonight in Ksuba.
Huh? There's a tonight in the marriage which is written in the ksuva. Obviously, it can't be a tonight in the ksuva itself. That does no good. But it was written in the ksuva in order to learn out. That's interesting. It's an interesting point you raised. It's a very controversial one, which is that l'chora from there you see that one could make a tonight in marriage, right? So, question under what parameters one is allowed to make such conditions when they're effective. But you're right. So you can't do it.
Was this in the Bavli? I don't recall this.
No, this whole Gemara is not the Bavli. Oh, this one is. This one is, yeah, but not of the Yevamos, in Bava Metzia. So, oh, come on, you don't remember from Bava Metzia. No, I didn't think so. So where'd you go for?
It was there.
Oh, no, it's not, but it sounded like you were,
No.
when I said Bava Metzia, said, Bava Metzia!
No, I just, why wouldn't it be Yevamos?
No, I don't know why it's not Yevamos. It's a good question, but here it says on the sides in Bava Metzia. But most of these Gemaras are not, in fact, in the Bavli. And example the next one. Rabbi Lezer is of a ksuva medrashi darsha ksuva as well. Tosha Elizabeth Zayat says Habonim Yerushu, there's not enough property to go around. The boys inherit. There isn't enough property to go around. Excuse me. Then Habonim Yerushu, the boys get the main inheritance. Vabonos Yezonu, and the daughters get fed whatever mizonos they need. Now, Mahabonim, what he darshan from this is Mahabonim ena Yorshid El Lachar Misasiveim. Just as a linkage, just like sons only get inheritance after their father dies. So two daughters only get fed after their father dies. During the lifetime, the father is not mechuyev to support them, which is an ironic thing. You figure if he's mechuyev after death, it's only mechuyev during lifetime, but it's only enforceable after death. Generally, the Bechabbrit was both vis-a-vis sons and daughters. One cannot enforce the parents to pay for their support. Only if you make it a Tanai Ksuva like this. Okay? Says more further. Meir said, now this is not our Ksuva, this is talking about a normal business document. Somebody accepts a field from his friend for sharecropping, and he guarantees it. So if it didn't produce, so we reckon, or the friend was negligent, the person who was supposed to be sharecropping it. So we deduce, or estimate, how much it should have produced for nosin low, and that's what you give to the owner who leased out the condition that she worked. Shukosiv low. Why do we measure it that way? Because the sharecrop always writes, if I leave it fallow, and I do not do what's necessary, I'm going to give you the best. So therefore we throw the book at him and have him give the full value of what the field or whatever it is would have been worth. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda darshan ksuva. Tani b'shem Rabbi Yehuda learned name Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe you order my day ishto kol korban shechayeves. Any if a woman committed sins and she's chayav bringing korban, so her husband means it's korbanos for her. I feel achla chelef, even if she ain't chelef. Not feel chelef the Shabbos, even if she is mechal Shabbos, he brings the korban. But Rabbi Yehuda said it should be potra, not potra. What if you divorced her in a chayav? They no longer have to bring korbanos on her. All bets are off, right? Shkeni koseves lo. And that's because of what she writes in her receipt to him when she gets her ksuva. It says, I release you of any responsibility, the Asian law, which came upon you, Mikadmas, not previously. From there on in, when she writes her receipt on her ksuva, he no longer has those responsibilities. Rabbi Yossi of a ksuva medrash, Rabbi Yossi darshan ksuva. Darsh Rabbi Yossi darshan, makom shenagu lasos ksuva milveh. It's interesting thing. This is actually what we do nowadays. when a woman doesn't actually bring in nowadays a tangible dowry, and they might be worth a lot of money, but there's no concept of dowry as there used to be in the old days, right? You got a dowry?
No, some people do.
So, who be they? Yeah.
I've heard some of them.
No, there's no formal dowries nowadays. What happens though, what we write in the ksuva though, is we make it generic. We say, and we do this today too. I don't have a translation of ksuva here, but or even the text of ksuva, although I probably could find one of these books. But the text of ksuva is, the chassan accepts upon himself the value of the dowry. No, that's not the dowry. That we're coming to later on. But it says that Hakol kibel olav chasan denan, b'me'ez kukim kesef tzoruf, v'hosiv lo midilei, od me'ez kukim kesef tzoruf, sachak o masayim kukim kesef tzoruf. It usually says that, which means that the chassan accepts upon himself the responsibility of 1,000 kukim, whatever that is, ounces or whatever it is, of silver, as corresponding to the value of her nedunya, of her dowry. So dowry's value is not actually assessed nowadays, right? We just give it a value and we say, he owes her this amount of money. See, when there was a truna dowry, so there would be a list of all the property she brought in, which she'd take out that property when she left the marriage. But nowadays we just make the dowry like a debt, an obligation outstanding upon him. Okay? So here it says, Dorish Rabbi Yossi Malkum Shnogel Asot Suva Milveh Gova with a kamatz as a call. She collects all that it says there. However, Lichpon, in some places, especially among the Sfarim, they inflate the figures astronomically. So when they double the figures, Eino Goveh. I had Goveh, but it's not. It's Govah. Eino Govah Ela Mechza. When she collects. Oh no, Goveh. No, I was right. Eino Goveh Ela Mechza. This is where they inflate the figures, and now he comes after the marriage. He knocks on his father-in-law's door and says, "Hey, Shmer! You see how much it says in the Ksuma that I owe you? That's what you owe me!" Right? Because the dowry is a two-way street. First he gets the dowry, and then he has to pay back in case of death or divorce, right? So the Shver can say, no, in our place we have a makom to write double. And in other words, you get half. If that's a minig makom, so we actually cut it in half. Okay? So Rabbi Lezer says, and here's a little bit missing, the Rabbi Lezer said, there's something missing here, but it should have said also Rabbi Lezer darshans medrash ksuva, and this is what he darshans. So Big Korban explains it. That what you quoted before. It says, "Ana eflach ve'ezun ve'ekri yasei chilechi." I'm going to work, and I'm going to support, and I'm going to hold you dear, and I'm going to sustain you. So from this we see, says the Gemara, one is not allowed to buy a pet, an animal, unless you have food for them. If you're not allowed to take a wife before you have the capacity to support her, right? And they explain, because you're required to feed your animals, not required to feed your wife. So therefore, if you have to for a wife, you have to do it for your animals. Okay? You said it, not me. That was not my voice on the tape. Okay, he says it on further. Rabbi Yeshua bekorcha of Aksuva Medrash. Korcha Dashin Aksuva. Dam Rabbi Yeshua Levi is also a regular document here. Rabbi Yeshua Levi said, Hamavas Chaver, if somebody loans money to his friend, they shouldn't take a collateral which is worth more than the debt itself. Why is that? It says, he writes in the document, in the bill of the loan, Tashlemta mina chasai, he writes, I will pay from my property. This is what the borrower writes. I'm going to pay for my property, the day which comes to my hand. In other words, the akna, I'm going to buy. If it's in property, I'm going to buy. not just property I have now, l'kabel dana, corresponding to the collateral which I gave you. So if the collateral is worth more than the actual debt, so oy va'avoy, right, then the borrower has to give actually more than he originally contracted for. Rav Chuna Darshan, getting back to the issue we discussed in Rav. Habanim Yushu, the boys inherit, Vabanas Yizainu, and the girls get fed from the estate. Ma'abanim Yoshim Minataltim, just like boys inherit also the movable objects, not just immovable objects. Afabanas Yizainu Minataltim, so do girls, you sell off movable objects to feed them, not just immovable objects. And abundance is honest to sustain the daughters, you don't use movable objects, and you only sell real estate. Masisa Messiah Shmuel. It seems like there's a brisa which is a proof to Shmuel. It says, "Benon nukvan, your daughters." This is what it says in Ksuv. We actually don't write this in Ksuv anymore. I don't know why we don't write the Ksuv anymore, but we don't. Benon nukvan, your daughters, the heaven l'chimina, which you're going to have from me. Yavin Yasmin Vavesi will sit in my house, and get supported from my property after the husband saying after his own death. His daughters will be supported in his house. The Thailand, we learn to say this, so from real estate and not from movable objects. So therefore you can't say that the daughters get supported from movable objects, that's explicitly only real estate. Or Rabbi Razina said, Ravuna said like Rabbi Shmuel, so the rest he's never called Rabbi Shmuel, that's probably a typo. And Rabbi Shmuel goes, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Tetzani, we learned it right, so, both property has a guarantee, which means real estate, which means movable objects, we use that to pay up, the sustenance of the woman and her daughters, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rebbe. That's where it's Rebbe. So Rebbe holds that even the chasim shein la machrayis, even movable objects are also under lien. Rabbi Shimon Elazar man the chasim shein la machrayis, if it's real estate, habonim motzim min habonim. In that case, boys who are younger can subpoena their older brothers for a portion. So to daughters who are younger subpoena their older sisters, siblings for a portion. If there's more than a property to go around, so the children can get their property which is coming to them, so they subpoena it from the girls. If there's not enough property to go around, then the daughters who get first dibs on the money can summon the money from their brothers, right? Now, all this is talking about property sheyesh lemachrayis, by real estate. However, sheyesh lemachrayis, if it's not real estate, if it's movable objects, habani motzim min habonos, then boys can take it from girls because it's really theirs because they're the heirs. Ve'ein habonos chotzim min habonim. However, girls cannot take from boys because it's not really theirs. Now, Armin, they said Chazaba Ravuna reneged on what he originally said. So this is an important point to make. In the time of the Gemara, in fact, where we paskin, I think it's Takona Zusha, that only Karakos are Meshuba to the Ksuva or any other debt. Even though it's a discussion over here, right? But we pass only the Kshtar, only real estate, except that the Gaonim made it Takona because Jews no longer own real estate at the time of the Gaonim. That Bismana said we even rely on Metaltlin for liens and debts and obligations. Okay, so nowadays we would agree to hold that liens and debts and obligations are outstanding against and collectible in movable objects. But Bismana Gemara, it seems that they didn't hold that way because Rav Chuna seems to have reneged and say you don't have to collect, right? Armin, they said Yos. Now here's a little bit of the rest of the page, a few corrections. Not very many. Not very many corrections, but here we have a couple. Armin, they said Yos. It should be you. It's good that you don't extrapolate from one to the other. Yerusha Dvar Torah. It says Yerksuva, but read Yerusha. It's Shari Torah, Seretz Yisrael. Yerusha's Doraisa. Umazan Abonas B'Divreim. and the food for the girls is the Rabbanon. V'divrayim, and he wanted the Rabbanons, and it should be L'meidim Divrei Torah. You think that you're going to learn that the Rabbanons are saying the Divrei Torah? In other words, Yerusha, you can inherit even Metaltlin. But funding the daughters, that's only to Rabbanon. When Rabbanon made Takana, it doesn't extend to everything. The rights extend to everything you do. Yerusha must be inherited, even if it's a coffee canister, right? Somebody's got to inherit it, so therefore Metaltlin works in that case. Metaltlin can pass by Yerusha to wherever the heirs are. When it's talking about a battle, so to speak, over the Rabbanon, over who's going to get whether the girls are going to get the foodstuffs or not get sustained or not get sustained. So in that case, Rabbanan can't go so far in that battle and allow that the girl even get the Metaltlin. They simply don't have the capacity. Well, it's not clear why not, but that's what the Gemara is saying. They don't have the capacity. So Ella, so says obviously that's not an issue, and that could be the machlokas. And obviously they only collect from real estate. Ella b'kesek ksuvas imam pliga. This is the interesting thing. The machlokas really concerns what they were arguing about at the top of the page is ksuvas banim dichrin. This is another thing which don't do anymore. Ksuvas banim dichrin. Remember what ksuvas banim dichrin is?
No.
Ksuvas
was my worst mistake.
Ksuvas banim dichrin is that, of course, a woman loses the right to a ksuva if she predeceases her husband, right? But they had an outlet for that in the old days, because what happens is that rich guys wouldn't want to give good big dowries to the daughters because maybe she'd predecease the husband and they'd lose all the money. So what they did is they used to write a document which was called Ksuvas Bain Dichrim, which said that if the girl has male children, then her ksuva goes to her children even though she did not outlive her husband. You see that?
Yeah.
It's called ksuva for the male children. So it's not really. So it's not. It's more of an inheritance. They're inheriting money which is tantamount to the ksuva.
My basis probate.
Probate, right? So the question is, however, does it have a din of a ksuva? And since it has a ksuva, it's only from real estate, or is it a din of Yerusha? It has a din of Yerusha, so therefore it even applies to metaltlin, to movable objects. What's its status? That's what the Gemara. That's what the machlokas was. But kesek ksuvas iman, the money which corresponds to ksuva their mother, please. That's machlokas. Kesek ksuvas iman, lav. So says more. I guess it's the conclusion. The kesek ksuvas iman, lav karko. There's no shaila, since it's not really Yerusha. It's only a ksuva which is being given down. It's like a consolation prize. So therefore, it's dafka in land, not in anything else. Okay. Period. Now, hayer l'nichsei ishto, v'nasan eina bolagarsha. If somebody went down to his wife's property to consume it, and he wanted to divorce her, already had a mind to divorce her, the kavat, and the idiot, the fink, before he divorced her, he jumped, the tojmeakak, and he harvested everything, scorched earth policy. He harvested everything from the ground. I raised his stories from this guy. He's a smart, shrewd fellow. He was quick, and he gained, he profited as a result. So what if he's a fake? Well, I say he made money, right? Hayar now gets more complicated. Hayar nechse shvuin. If somebody is an heir to somebody who's been taken captive, v'shama shein alein shein masha shiboim. So he went there. He was living in their property all the time, but then he heard they're coming. V'kavatzu tolash min hakaka, and he jumped and he took from the ground. Harezes ours v'niskar. Gewaltig. He gets to keep what he did. What's the property of a captive? Anytime they went, Aviv, his father, or Achiv, his brother, or one, of anybody who bequeaths to him according to our logic line of bequest. And any of these guys goes to Medina and goes to Chutzarts. And here that he dropped dead. You go down to his property, so that case they would say, whatever you got to take out, you get to keep. However, if it's a property of a natush, not a shomi, a natush, then the guy who took all the property does not get to keep it. What are netushin? Anybody who went Aviv, his father, or Achiv, his brother, or one so anybody can bequeath him. Limdia said the Chutzlarts, there was no rumor that they died. You just don't know what happened to them. He goes down to their property, so he gets to take whatever he chaps before they get back, he gets to keep. Right? Because in both cases it's clear to us that no, he can't. It says he can't keep it. Sorry. In Shavui he can keep it because we say it's clear to us that the Shavui has also to a large extent given up his life and therefore he's willing to forego the property. The guy is there as long as he's there. But the Natush, he didn't say anything. We don't know that anything befell him negative, right? Just know he has to come back from the Sayyam. So therefore he can't go down to his property, right? Now, we're in Shigam Lil argues. Amr Shigam Lil say, Shamate, I heard, Hushvinu Natushin. Both by captives and by people who went to the Sayyam but did not know what happened to them, that we can't go down to the property. Even the sons can't go down to the property.
Is there statute of limitations?
No. Nothing more. There might be in the Rishonim, but nothing more. Obviously, if there must be something, I don't know what it is. Avanese Ritushin with a resh. That much that we don't let him get away with whatever he chopped down before the owner came. Ritushin, what's a Ratush? Koshach Aviva Achiva Echomika Morishno Som Diasayam. Any one of the people who could bequest them went to Chutzarts, and not get back, he would have commanded something. That's true by Shavi and a Natush as well. However, Ratush says Shiyatz Ladas. A Ratush, somebody had to flee. But he had ample time to command people what to do. Teilachah, so it must be if he didn't tell people what to do, She'ila Haya Rotzel Avichum Min Achosav. He was looking for a plot, and this is why he fled, to keep his heirs and creditors away from his estate. So in other words, not even a Shavi or a Natush. So we would say the reason why he didn't tell us what to do is because he didn't have time, or didn't anticipate this tragic thing happening. But as a Ratush is somebody who flees, but has time before he flees and could have told us what to do. And since he didn't tell us what to do, so it's illegal for us to go into his field and try and maintain his field for him. Because he never gave permission to do so, even though he had the capacity and the time and the possibility of doing so therefore we're stuck. Okay? Some logical thing, right? No, Shavui, Natush had time to command, did not have time to command, so therefore we assume that they would have allowed us to go down. Natush had time to command, didn't command, we assume he didn't allow us to go down. So Arela Das he also because he went out to Tivon and didn't say anything. Rabbi Yehuda Hashem Shua said, Hamataltlin Ein Bei Mishim Nuchse Ritushim. Now this means not just Ratush, but you can't give metaltlin over to anybody who's related. Because you can't give metaltlin movable objects to any real relative of a Shavi, of a Natush, of a Ratush. Why is that? Because the guy's never going to get it back. Right? The real estate will get back, but he can't get his metaltlin back. Rabbi Yaakov B'Shem Rav Yehuda said, "Come on, if you have a grain which is about to be harvested, or grapes are about to be harvested, they're considered to be metaltlin, despite the fact that they're still connected to the ground. So be metaltlin, we don't give it to the other families, right? We sell it and we keep the money for the family who was in captivity. Rav Sheshes that. Even the client of Bavel, the palm trees in Bavel, the low tzichim marakucha, they don't need to get softer anymore. We eat them when they're hard. So what's the status? Is it okay or not okay? So it's when Alomi Stabrim Bi'avdin makes no more. It does not make sense to say anything other than we make them kikama medesli kotzer gfanim adosi botzer, like any other crop which is about to be harvested. Already has it in a metaltlin, and therefore you go after the status of metaltlin when it's which is developed as far as it can, even though it hasn't yet been harvested from the tree yet. Okay. Now, this is the last Nachlas Tzvi in the book is actually in this Mishnah, but I think we can get along without it. Everybody's believed to testify on the woman that her husband died, Chutzi Chamosah, besides her mother-in-law, Ubat Chamosah, her sister-in-law, Vitzaras, and her co-wife, Vivimta, and her sister-in-law through her husband's brother, Ubas Bala, her husband's daughter through another marriage. Why do we believe them in that case when they say the husband died? Because what are we afraid they're doing? Lying. Why would they lie? Why would they lie? Because they hate her.
Oh.
These are women who hate each other. Right? Mothers-in-law, daughters-in-law, sisters-in-law, stepdaughters. They hate her. So therefore they try and mess her up. Okay? Because now the ball tonight says the Gemara, Eina Chora married Tate to Mace. Venices. And at 1:8 says, let's get Ma ben get the Misa. What's interesting, get, we believe even one of these hated women, and death we don't, Shaksab Mochia, because you got a document. So that proves that there's indication that they're telling the truth. If they come and they bring the document and say, this is Yankel's get, he wants to Megarish, you who happen to be my sister-in-law, since the get itself is probably not forged, we'll verify it's not forged, so we assume that the rest of it is okay as well. Okay? So name it, 1:8 says he died. Then he says he got married. Another 8 comes, and says lo mace, he didn't die. I raise the they say so she can stay married. Okay? 8 Amar Mace, one say he died. Ushtami Omes, and some say he didn't die. Ava Pishani says even though she got married, they say she's got to get divorced. Now this is talking about the name Moshe brings down from the probably. If it's talking about Adam Mom, it's partial to just get divorced because it's two Adam, right? Two Adam, that's what. Of course, it's why where all the Adam are Adam Sulim. You had one woman against 2 women. So I might say, well, they equal out because none of them are real Adam. So Chiddush is that normally we say if it's not a b'diavad situation, go after the majority of opinions expressed, even though they're postulators. But here we don't say that because we're talking about where she has already gotten married already, right? Oh no, we do say it. So we do go after the majority. We do go after the majority. She says, saying that she got married, she has to get divorced. It's the other case. 2 say she died, that the guy died. One says lo mace, he didn't die. So even though she didn't get married, since it's 2 against 1, Tina says she's allowed to get married. Okay, Tani, we learn. Just like the mother-in-law is not believing on the daughter, and so the daughter-in-law is not believing on the mother-in-law, and vice versa and all that. Ben Chamoisa, now the Gemara says a very interesting thing which more immediately rejects. I don't think this is in the Bible either. Ben Chamoisa, a brother-in-law is also not believed. Kibbutz Chamoisa, just like a sister-in-law. Isn't that interesting? Sister-in-law is not believed, neither is a brother-in-law, because the brother-in-laws are as vindictive, spiteful, and hateful, and want to mess her up as much as the brother sisters-in-law. Says the Gemara, Ben Bala, also your stepson, Kibbutz Bala, is like your stepdaughter. Tzarasa, and your co-wife, I feel this even if she was divorced from your husband, but she still hates you. Either she hates you more, right? Spite. So therefore, your Yevama is the Yevama's not believed. I feel even if it's her sister, right? In other words, no matter what the relationship is, if it's Yevama, meaning your own sister married to your brother-in-law, you should not believe because we don't know what animosity she had towards you. Amr Yosef said, "Masiso Amr Cain." Did our Mishnah say this? It didn't say this. The contrary, it says, we know that males and females are not the same. See that when we learned over there, a woman is not believed to say her brother-in-law died. Shetina say, in other words, we know her husband died, but she wants to say, no, my brother-in-law also died. So she can get married without doing Yibur or Chalitza, right? She's not believed to say that. And also, of Lomei Salchotzi, she's not believed to say that her sister died. She has a constipation that she can marry her sister's husband instead of her sister, which is okay after her sister died. Neishain Labanim, in which case it would be okay. Here the Korbanei throws some important words. I almost missed them. The Korbanei throws in, Ve'en Aish Neman Lomar Meis Achish Yabim Misishli. a brother is also not believed to say, well, my brother died and I want to be miyam his wife. L'shem shamayim, right? It's not allowed to say, my brother died, I need to be miyam his wife. It's not believing that. Why? Mipnei she'ein lo banim. Well, he's not believing in a case where she has no kids, because then she would be available for him for evil. But if she did have kids, then he's believed to say that my brother died. Why is he believed then? Because he doesn't have personal interest, because he doesn't have to leave him anyway, because she has kids, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, we see a husband's believed even on a sister-in-law. If we held of the animosity principles in our Mishnah by men, so then there should be also for a brother-in-law to testify to sister-in-law. So what do we see? That this kind of plotting and scheming only goes on among women. Okay? This is the I just say over the facts. That's all I do. Okay. If she does have sons, then the other actually should be in the brother-in-law, Naaman. Okay, coming back to the Mishnah. This is a quote from the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that by a get, we believe her, even if she's one of the women who has animosity, because she's bringing a get. It's written down. So it says more, why is that enough? So don't we have to believe what she says also? If the shliach on the get doesn't say in front of me it was written, in front of me it was signed, do you allow her to get remarried? Of course you don't. So here too, Lamaisa relying on one of the hated women, because she had to say, in front of me was signed and sealed, right? Says the Gemara, written and signed. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yisrael says a cool thing. It says, Amar Rabbi Rabun says, it should be calcula, but same idea. A husband is not suspect to write his wife a forged get. He's not suspect to do that, because no husband is going to do that. Just don't divorce her. Why should you write a forged get? Nobody's supposed to write a forged get, right? Yeah. So he's not believed to say, I forged the get. That is not believed. But based on Choshev Kallah, but he suspect that and once the get is written, he's going to muff up in Basin and have improper witnesses signed, right? The witnesses won't be good witnesses, right? So therefore, we made him say Forei Nechtam. Why? Or send a shliach, because then Shemitoshu there Shimbavi Irer Irura Bato. Now he knows, even though it's not necessarily true that Achrei speaking out getting. What happens if after having said Forei Nechtam, or having said so, he say Forei Nechtam, he came and complained anyway? Is he believed or not believed? So it's a machloikas. But Lamaitza here then what seems to indicate, and the Pashas Gemara getting is he's not believed anymore. So that's why I had him say Forei Nechtam, right? Because since he knows if he says Forei Nechtam, he's no longer believed. He's going to make sure to use kosher witnesses, because at that point it's also ready for following. There's no point in his trying to delay the inevitable of the gerushin. Here too, since they know that since we know that if she says Forei Nechtam, since she knows that if she says Forei Nechtam, they know she nor the husband can no longer come and question the validity of the get. So therefore, Afil Meres Hamesh, she also says the truth. Okay, so the Yerushalmi clearly is building that once she says Forei Nechtam, she knows she can't say anything afterwards to mess her up. So if she's willing to go that far, so therefore I believe her, Ray, despite the fact she has animosity, it must be that she's telling the truth, because otherwise she just loses by as a result. In front of me it was written sign. Okay? Piska, new case. One witness says he's dead. And he says, and she gets remarried. Another one comes to Amr and says, Lo Meis, he's not dead. They say she can't get divorced. She doesn't have to get divorced. Why? Mishnah says because the second aid came when she was married. He says, but if let's say the aid came before she got married, she ignored the second aid who said that the husband didn't die. Then she got remarried. And he says, they'd say she has to get divorced in that case. Now, that argues on the Bavli, because in the Bavli it says, once she got a heter to marry, even if a second aide came and said her husband didn't die, she can follow the heter to marry, as long as it's not 2 against 1. So the Bavli and Yerushalmi are arguing. The Bavli holds that as once she got a heter, it's as if she's already married. She does not have to pay attention to a second witness who comes anymore. But the Yerushalmi is saying that if the second witness came before she got married, she cannot get married, and if she did get married, she's got to get divorced. Now, this is anyway. Rabbi Bavli says it's only according to Rabbi Nachman Rabbi Yossi. Chachamim argue, but even the Chachamim are not like the Bavli's Chachamim. Ben Omer Mishnis is whether the second witness came after she was already married. Ben Omer Chaloni says, or the second witness came before she was married. Vinny says, and then she got married anyway. Right? It doesn't say Vinny says here, but it should say. The Mashbiach puts it in. Ben Omer Chaloni says, Vinny says, Lotina say, in both these cases, she should not get remarried. Vinny says, they say only if it's after the actual fact, then she doesn't have to get divorced. Okay? Now, the next case, until Mishnah is very cool. If you just give me a minute, we'll go there. Rav says, this is up if there were 2 actual witnesses who came and said her husband's dead. She got married, right? I feel also, it should be also. Even if the husband comes back and says, I'm here! Right? Armin lay, we say it should be Armin lay, lace atami, or lace itanu. It's not exactly what that word means, but it means that you're not with us. It means, you're not the husband. Oh, you're not the husband. Now, that says, we had something like this before. Rashur Yitzchak said, boy, he said, imagine, let's say he's a famous man, Konimi. Like Ravami, how can we deny it to him? I'm ready to say, Boone, you're right. No, he said you're wrong, actually. He says, aren't there several people like Ravami who say it's an imposter? We rely on the 2 witnesses who say this guy's an imposter. The case of this came above in front of the rabbis. So they said to the husband, Lei said, Lei Satani. You're lazy Tonu. We don't believe that you're the guy. Come Abba Rabba, but nevertheless Abba Rabba, who's Shmuel's father, got up, and whispered in the ears of the second husband, right? Well, it's not clear which husband. The first husband, who just came back, or the second husband, who Kormate says to the second husband. He said, Amalei b'chayach, nevertheless, by your life, Havlo get me suffik, give her get me suffik. Because maybe it is really the guy. Kavot Hamei the Rav, the students of Rav got up, and they beat him. Shmuel's father, for anything, said this. Amar, some say Arkaso Yakad, that he got burnt by a strap, and some say V'sapslo Yakad, that he got burnt by a bench. Anyway, they got physically violent with him. Shmuel says, no, Tavana Avina, I was there when my father got beat up. They didn't burn him up with the belt. Below Sapsas, the kiddos know with the bench. Abo Hu Delaka, they just beat him with their fists. V'kamla. Nevertheless, despite that, V'kamla means he got the keeper, right? As a result of that, Rav's psak ruled the day, and he got the keeper. As of the Kumid Rabbi Yami, nevertheless, later on, next generation, okay, so this came from Rabbi Yami. He said, in Bori Lushayaloch, in Bori Dihi, I guess he said to the second husband, if it's clear to you that she's telling the truth, Shayaloch, you get to keep her. I'll tell you that, but you should know that we know that although we can't prove it, it really is the husband. And therefore, you should know the Boneh Dahu Gavre, your kids, Mamzer Kumishmaya. We won't rule them Mamzerim here on earth, but they'll be Mamzerim vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, he said, just divorce her. And Vava Rabbi Zir Makalisle, Rabbi Zir praised him to Moikim Milsa Bore, he clarified the matter properly. Meaning that Lamaisa, we don't go so far. Even though Rab said we can just ignore the husband who came and said he's not the guy, we don't go that far. And we tell the woman, theoretically, on the books, you could deny that it's him and continue to remain married, But we tell the second husband, theoretically you can deny him and continue to remain married, but better to divorce because Lamaisa, it's reasonable that it is the guy. Unless it's totally irrational.
Yeah, my kids are they mamzerim?
Yes, they're not mamzerim technically, but nobody's going to want him. The case of the worm mamzerim which I had earlier is where we knew was the husband.
Yeah.
This is the only time I guess we don't know it's the husband. No.
The other one
If we really know it's the husband, then we can't get away with it. This is the only case where we don't really know it's the husband, right? But you understand, okay, without getting into it in greater detail.